Hey beauties, and welcome back to Aesthetic Chat with Kiki. I'm your host, Kiana Gamble, and I'm so excited to kick off season 6 with this first guest. She has a depth of knowledge for you all. We actually met on a webinar together. We were both panelists, and just what she was sharing on that panel, I just knew I had to have her on the podcast to share all of her knowledge with all of you. So without further ado, welcome Taylor to the podcast. So first I want you to just kind of give everyone a little brief overview on who you are and kind of what you have going on so far.
Sure. So Taylor Siemens, I'm a nurse practitioner. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I run a multi-site group called Vitalic. We're here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Houston. We have 6 locations currently, but my background is facial plastics, and left my facial plastic surgeon about 5 years ago to start up Vitalic, and haven't slept since. We're running and gunning.
It's amazing. So you have 6 locations. Tell me the growth of that. So obviously started with 1 location, and kind of walk me through those steps of deciding to grow your practice, because 6 practices in 5 years, that's a lot.
Yeah. We opened those 6 and 3.5 years to put a little
Wow.
more pressure behind that. Vitalic is not my brainchild. I started this with our founder, who's no longer associated with the company. He's since exited. But that was really his goal from the very beginning. He wanted to build something large. He had his eyes set on about 20 to 25 locations here in Texas when we started. Started from a place of we are going to scale and grow this. And that was really the heartbeat behind Vitalic. It's funny because I'm actually, this is like my dirty secret. Not everybody knows this. I'm actually kind of against like multi-site aesthetics practices. They really go against a lot of what I believe in as a clinician, but I joined him to start this because that is the goal of many people. So I'm like, all right, if this is going to happen, and this is where a lot of our industry is headed, I believe that I can help do this in an ethical way and in a smart way for clinicians and patients. So let me take a stab at it and see if I can help shape and mold the future of what a lot of other groups are going to be doing. But yeah, we opened those 6 and 3.5 years, and really just are in a pause season at the moment. Growing and scaling quickly is tiring, and there's a lot of systems that you think you're building for growth, and then you realize 2 locations later, oh wait, no, that was great for 3, but it doesn't work for 5 or whatever that is. And so we've taken the last year and a half or so to say, okay, are our systems actually built for scale, or were they built for now? And we feel pretty good about where we're headed now, and we'll probably go back into growth mode here in the next year.
Nice. So I have 2 questions for you. The first one being, if the original goal with your original partner was 20 to 25 medical spas, is the goal still to be around that 20 to 25 within Texas?
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll probably even take on some partnerships to grow outside of Texas now. We've learned a lot in the last 5 years. I've learned that there are things that are not super scalable with this, and you have to pivot. Markets are different. It's not like you can just copy and paste these things at every location, but have learned a lot over that time that I really feel like we have a good system down that we can continue to grow and do it in a way that is, again, ethical for patients and provides really great earning opportunities and growth opportunities for clinicians out there that want to be in this space.
Yeah, you did mention that, you were pretty against kind of multi-space, multi-location practices before you kind of jumped into this venture. So again, I think one of my concerns, and probably one of your concerns as well, was kind of quality, and again, making sure that ethically speaking, they're being built in the correct ways. So how did you personally kind of get past that point, or kind of what kind of steps have you made to make sure that, quality is there and all of those other components?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know that I have gotten over that. And I think it's a really healthy fear, right? You're an injector. When we're learning, it's always that like the fear of an injecting is the fear of anatomy, those things. Like understanding anatomy keeps you a safe injector. I think this plays in the same way on the operational side of things, like being afraid of becoming a schemy and sleazy and an ethical practice. It really keeps me in check in the decisions that we're making to make sure we are not that. And so that's really where a lot of my time is spent these days, is as we're growing and taking on new ideas and options and strategies. I live with those as a clinician first. So I'm still in the treatment room. I'm still treating. Unfortunately, only about 15 hours a week is kind of the max that I can do with running the business. But I relish that time because it's my time to whatever I'm thinking of asking our team to do, I do it first. There are so many things that don't filter through my treatment room that I think are good business ideas. And then when I try them out as a clinician, I'm like, oh my gosh, I could never ask our team to do this because that didn't feel right. Like that is not how I would present this to a patient. Or no, I would have just been doing that for a sale and that's not okay. And so I really rely on that fear and my time in the treatment room to build something that is sustainable and is right.
That's great. I think honestly, having that fear and really tying it back to being an injector and, having that fear of anatomy and like always having that fear because once you don't have that healthy fear, then you're unsafe. So I really like that tie back to it. Do you like the split that you currently have with only 15 hours in the treatment room and then operations and that side of the business on the other half of the week? Even I guess it's more of like a quarter and then 3/4 business at this point.
Yeah, so my kind of week schedule right now. So we have Vitalik. I also have a training consulting firm, and every weekend that is what I do. So I spend like my weeks, I dedicate about 15 hours to clinic. I dedicate about like 15 hours to training consulting a week. And then I dedicate like another 40 hours a week to operations. So just like everybody else, we're all wearing so many hats and so busy. But yeah, I think balance can always be improved in those things. And I think it's different with seasons too, right? Right now we're really gearing up for some big changes in Q4 that my 15 hours a week in clinic is like kicking my butt. Like it seems like so much, but I know a couple months from now, I'll be like, oh man, I could take on some more patients. There's just ebbs and flows to those things. I think that perceived balance we're looking for, it just changes based on what's going on, what season it is too, with clinic and things of those nature.
Absolutely. Honestly, I think balance doesn't really exist. It's always going to be imbalance, but what you're prioritizing definitely changes with the season, like you're saying.
1,000%. Yes.
So, with what you've learned in 5 years, because I would say that comparing to maybe a listener who's like, I want to take that leap and, maybe open my own practice, and they're thinking about just like one single location versus kind of the beast that you have going on. I know it's obviously not just you, you have a team behind you that's helping you kind of navigate some of these things, systems, operations, scalability. Walk me through that team that's behind you, as well as kind of some of those things that you maybe wish you would have known starting out at the very beginning.
Yeah. I always preface my answer to this to two things. Number one, amazing if you want to start your own business. Like that is something that is commendable and so exciting. And if that is a goal of yours, then rock and roll. But on the flip side of that, owning your own practice is not the only way to be successful in this industry. And I always say that because I think we as an industry have done a really poor job applauding the people who are helping other people build their businesses and still being excellent providers and injectors. The only way to be successful in the space is not by having your name on the building. I always like to say that our patients need the other people. Like we could not grow and do what we're doing without other people who want to play that role and be clinician full time as well. But the second thing is deciding if you want to stay one location or solo practitioner or building. I think there's challenges in all of it. And it's just depending on what challenge you want. I was just having this conversation with my husband actually this weekend where we have a lot of movement right now with our team and like there's some changes and some stressors. And I told him like, man, I kind of miss the day where it was just like renting a room and like my treatment in a bag and I could show up and see my patients and move on. Like I kind of miss those days. Like, would I ever go back to that? Like just playing the what if game. And that's literally what he said. He was like, Taylor, you could do that. And in 5 years, I know you'd be telling me, I kind of miss the days when I had 100 people in the org and we were having to shake things and move things. Like, there's so many different ways that this could look like. It's just a matter of what you're actually looking for. But for our team, yes, my gosh, I would be literally dead without our team. I rely on them so much. So with us now, we have practice managers in every location, and they're really responsible for just patient satisfaction, customer service, team satisfaction, team turnover, those types of things, really being the one-on-one resource for the team there. But then we also have a corporate team. So our marketing is in-house. All of my operations is in-house. And so we're running all of those departments as well. We don't really work with contractors much anymore, which is kind of nice just because it's my girls. We all know what we're working towards and building towards, which is a really sweet season as well.
Very cool. Deciding to run your own practice versus not, versus being the entrepreneur versus the entrepreneur and trying to decide. I think, and this is my personal opinion,
Yeah.
the people that are actually within the organization and like you said, they can do their job and then they can go home. In a sense, they possibly are making more money than someone who is starting out and
Absolutely.
building the ship and putting up the capital. So yeah, there's definitely different stressors, but also I think it takes the right personality.
To know that there's somebody else who's losing sleep on making sure you get paid that day, that's really a
Yeah.
gift to sleep peacefully. And I don't mean to make it sound bad on our side of things. I think they're both really special. And I think it's just important that our industry understands they are both really special. You can still be applauded and honored and serve your patients so well, regardless of which one of those you are. I had a team member a few years ago who left us. She wanted to go open her own thing. So I said, hey, can I just take you to dinner? Designation accepted. No big deal. Can I just take you to dinner, like peer to peer, injector to injector? Like, let's go chat. And I told her all the hard things. I'm like, look, I'm not trying to talk you out of this, but I want to make sure you understand what it is that you're signing up for, because I think we do a really good job of not letting people see sometimes entrepreneurship is hard. And so I told her all the things and she was like, thanks so much for being honest with me. This is something I really want to do. I really feel like I have to do it. I'm like, amazing. And unfortunately, her practice was only open for about 6 months and she ended up having to go back to work. And for her, she was like, I lost so much money. I never want to do that again. I had no idea what this actually entailed. Like, I didn't even get to focus on my patients anymore. But for her, she's like, I would have had wondering eyes the rest of my career wanting to do that. So I owed it to myself to try. I'm like, amazing. If that's what you wanted, you needed to. But there's a lot of peace and security and other options too, right? There are more ways than one.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story because, again, social media is its own beast and that's only one part of everyone's story. But I think that we see more and more that sometimes you have maybe that entrepreneur, like buddy injector that helps build a practice with someone, right? And they're kind of side by side and you maybe know them as like a duo almost. And then you now see more that duo partner that was integral in building that business goes off and does their own thing. So I'm curious kind of the behind the scenes work of that. And again, I'm a team of myself.
Sure.
So as someone who's looking to potentially grow their team and do things like that, I think that's a scary part when it comes to hiring people is one, trusting somebody else with your business, but two, building that connection, basically sharing all of your kind of like secrets,
Yeah.
right? And then they go and just want to open their own thing down the street. I think that's a fear that I think that some business owners do have, but then we also see it from that provider perspective too, like having that internal drive to want to build something bigger.
Yeah, I talk a lot with other business owners of just like the threat of, and it's not really a threat. We're like, you're doing a SWOT analysis of like, okay, what are the threats? What are the things that are going to bring us down? It's like clinical entrepreneurship is a real thing. Like clinicians want to be their own bosses. And so how do you tap into that? Well, you give people that feeling of really being in charge of their destiny under your brand, where they get that itch that they're looking for, but you also get to protect them from the mess that they don't necessarily know or want to deal with. And so I always list it on the threat column, but also the opportunity column. Because if you as a business owner can figure out how to tap into somebody else's desire for clinical entrepreneurship, then I think that's really how you get their like stickiness with you and your brand and what you want to build with them. But it's also like, yeah, I need my team more than they need me, to be honest with you, right? There are so many aesthetic practices now that they could just jump ship and go to, where my market to pull and recruit the people that I really want to work with is so much smaller than their market for a new employer. And so it really takes a lot of trust and a lot of evaluating the people that you're bringing into your space for sure.
So for you, talking about that leadership component, because really that what you exactly touched on is you developing as a leader to be able to develop other people. So for you specifically, how did you develop into the leader that you want to become? Are you going to conferences? Do you have a mentor? How are you getting the leadership training that you feel like you need in this role that you're in?
Yeah, all of the above. I have a huge ego, as most of us in this industry do, right? We're told all day how amazing we are. I come from like facial plastics world. We're like, I'm good at what I do. Then becoming a leader, you just automatically assume like, oh, I'm going to be good at this too. And so it takes a lot of humility to recognize like, wait, I'm not that good at this, or assuming like, even if you don't know, assume that you're not. So you put in the work to be better. And yeah, conferences as a clinicians, we spend a lot of time going to like, injectable conferences and anatomy conferences, but there's even more pressure and need to be going to leadership conferences. So these days, that's what I'm spending my money on. Books. I'm reading all the time, leadership books. I pay for mentorship, business mentorship as well. And I do whatever I can to be in the rooms with other leaders outside of the aesthetic space as well, because there are some amazing leaders out there where aesthetics leaders, like ultimately it's a pretty new gang. Not to say we don't know what we're doing. We do, we're growing, but we're so new as an industry that we need to learn from other industries who already have figured out a lot of leadership things as well.
Any recommendations on specific mentors or specific books for those people that are like, I have an idea of the type of leader that I want to be, but I'm just not developed into that leader yet?
Yeah. My advice is always find someone that has work and experience building something that you desire. And I don't necessarily mean the business that you want. So, for example, my business coach, my husband is not involved in Vitalik at all. We own other businesses together and run those together. We are very much a husband wife duo, but he's not involved in the med spa space. But my business coach actually has a background in working with couples who are in business together. And so we rotate. Like sometimes I meet with just him, and then sometimes my husband is in on those calls because my business mentor and coach is used to coaching spouses who work together. And so that has helped us tremendously because he can even, it's a little bit like therapy. It's business coaching, but he is also helping my husband understand like these are the changes she's going through as a leader. This is how you need to help her. Or, hey, Taylor, that's a you at work thing. You can't take that home to your husband. Where I don't know that other business coaches necessarily would be speaking to that so directly. And so don't be afraid to get creative in finding someone who just represents your overall goal. For me, my overall goal is sure to build this business, but it's also to be a leader who is a really phenomenal wife and a really phenomenal family member as well. And so having someone who can pour into me and all of those stages and how me leveling up in one area mean sacrificing in another and how I keep those even has been really, really critical for me.
So, with this business coaching, has this coach been with you since you opened the practice, have you been coaching with the same coach for many years?
I have, yeah. We actually started with him probably about 4 years ago. So
Okay.
it was about a year into the practice where, again, I was not humble at the beginning with it. I thought I was doing a really good job because I was a great clinician. I was helping other people be great clinicians, but that wasn't translating to other roles in the practice and how we wanted to grow. And so thankfully, I have someone who was willing to be honest with me of like, this is the narrative being written about you. And I don't think you want that to be your narrative. Like, what are you going to do about this? And so very early on, it was like, all right, I've got to figure out. First, I started in my life. Like, who do I know that could mentor me or pour into me? And it's not that I didn't have people that I respect in my life, but they weren't the examples that I was seeking. And so I had to go elsewhere. And I even think about future stages. I don't have kids yet. I don't know if I'll have kids, but if I ever do, I'll probably switch to a different business coach of maybe a businesswoman who has multiple kids and has built Fortune 500 companies while being a mom. Those are the people I want to learn from who have already done what I am wanting to do. And I can look to their life, not just their career, but the whole thing to say, all right, I'm working towards that. Help me get there.
I love that. So, even without me asking the question, you already answered the question. So, I was asking how long you had been with this business coach because one, I think that business coaching is maybe underrated in the space of aesthetics. I don't think that we see a lot of people talking about using business coaches and using them to our advantage. But the other thing being, I've hired a handful of business coaches up to this point in my life, but sometimes it's kind of a finite relationship. They can get you to a certain point, and then you need to find someone else to kind of continue to level you up. So I love that I don't have kids either, but eventually maybe I do need to find a mentor that like I want to model my life after. Are you willing to share anything that you have learned in your journey thus far, whether it's injecting or as a business owner, that you can prevent others from making the same mistakes?
Yeah. I think my first one that I always say is like admit your mistakes. That's like honestly the best advice that I can have as a clinician and as a business owner. I think we're also trying to hold on really tightly to being perfect and like, then I knew exactly to take this next step. No, I have an idea of things, but we have to pivot, and we're so much better when we can hold those mistakes and then actually operate through them. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I have made on the operation side is really holding so tightly to like building for this current stage. And it just leads to band-aids. Like, don't be afraid to build for tomorrow, whatever tomorrow looks like for you. Especially for us, when we knew we were going to grow and scale, yet I couldn't wrap my mind around a specific hire that I didn't necessarily need today, but I knew in a year they would make sense. Like, when you find that right person, you have to figure it out, and you're able to stop putting band-aids on things, but actually grow things to scale is my biggest thing with that. Is just, I've made so many hiring mistakes, and I could write a whole book on it at this point. But I think that's really common for our industry too. We end up being a little reactive instead of proactive. And so the sooner we can get our minds to really think about the future and what we're wanting to do and work backwards, it really becomes a lot easier to build whatever you're trying to build.
So, systems and operations is like a giant umbrella, right? So, define kind of what your role is within exactly systems and operations and kind of give some good ideas on how people can really optimize that.
Yeah. Something, and again, this is probably a mistake that I've held on to is currently, as it stands today, I'm still sitting in like our lead department head of marketing, clinical, and operations. So I have a bunch
Wow.
of people that funnel under, probably held on to things for so long, but I've had a really hard time separating like, no, what is actually marketing? What is actually just clinical or just operations? Because it's so married in our space. If we're going to come up with promotion, well, it has to come from a clinical mind, right? But also that operationals piece is like, hey, are we even going to make money off of this? Does this even make sense for the business? But then from marketing of like, how do we portray this to our patients in a way that it makes sense for them to actually go through with this treatment plan? And my brain works in all of those at one time, that it's been really hard to separate those. And so that is like what we're in the thick of right now, is really trying to tease out what part of this actually belongs to which department, so that way we can actually grow and scale those things further. But then it's just your like core processes for all of that. Like, sure, from a very basic standpoint, your clinical SOPs, like, right, like what's legal, what's compliant, what is safe, what is your medical director okay with? But you really should have all of those things for all of the other aspects as well. Like, how do we come up with the promotions? How do we verify if they're even clinically sound, and if they're actually going to make money, and if our patients even want them, or are we just spinning our wheels just to say we have a promo this month? And so really documenting all of those processes. And really what we're doing right now is like, okay, whenever I fire myself from this role and we actually get somebody here to come lead this department, not that I'm just going to hand them a book of things and walk off, but essentially it should all be documented that way, that I could do that. And then we coach to it. And so that's really where we are pulling back on a lot of the other departments right now, to just like, let's get back to the basics. Have we just made all these things so much more complicated than they really need to be?
My question for you, you're talking about how you're in the process of trying to separate all of these different entities, but they all do work together. So are you successfully teasing them out and actually separating them into different roles so you can hire for those specific roles? And are you doing that successfully, or do you feel like you'll always have your hands like
Yeah, to
on
be
the top?
determined, to be determined. I mean, technically, I guess I've been trying to sort that out for 5 years and it hasn't really happened yet. I think also once we like hire the right people that I know that I can trust and relinquish, I think that's been a lot of it too, is we've tried people in the roles and great humans, but they were not right for the company. And so it almost just made me a little scorned of like, I've got to hold on to this tighter because I can't trust anyone else with it. Whereas like, that's just a totally false narrative. Like, I know I couldn't trust that person with it. That is not a reflection of every person that we're going to try to put in the roles. And so I think, yeah, once we find the right people, I'll circle back and let you know how successful it's going.
Yeah. My question for you when it comes to hiring a team and those types of things, you did touch earlier on at one point you guys were using contractors, and it sounds like now you're kind of transitioning to kind of keeping everything in house. But with that, and in your experience of hiring for all these clinics, have you found it to be more successful hiring people that do have quote unquote like aesthetic experience or experience within this space? Or do you prefer to hire someone that's very green, very new? Maybe they have experience in something else, but they just really are interested in this
Yeah.
specialty.
For me, it really depends on the role. Practice managers, yes, it is very helpful if they have experience in this industry or a related industry, right? Maybe it was dental or ophthalmology, something of similar natures. But as you know, this industry has so much nuance to it, yet at the same time, it's like very specific, like you have to hold both of those at the same time. And so when you're trying to teach operational processes and tie that to the clinical nature, it is challenging if they don't have some type of understanding. Where, like an esthetician, no, I don't necessarily need them to have experience because they already went through a training program that they're going to at least understand a little bit. And then we can mold them into the type of esthetician that we want. So it really has kind of depended on the role and what they're going to be doing for us to determine how tightly I hold on to that. This industry is also just growing so quickly that I think it's going to be harder to find people with experience, or if you do, it's going to cost you a lot more to get them. And so we also have to be really good at bringing people into the fold quickly to be able to get them where we need them to go.
Absolutely. You're also in Texas, so that's where majority of the legislation has been coming out recently about kind of practice
Yeah.
and all of those types of things. So how has that been for you as a practice owner? And again, someone who's in systems and operations, and that may change your guys' day to day, possibly. Like, how are you guys keeping up with everything?
Yeah, actually something I'm really proud of is none of our processes have to change with the most recent regulation, because we were already doing it in a way that was best for the patient and that wasn't aligned with where laws were. And so we were kind of already ahead of it. It's like people were freaking out about all these changes. We're like, okay, cool. No big deal. It's just another day. We were already doing it that way. But I think it's things to pay attention to. I'm fortunate enough. I'm the clinical advisor for the American Medical Spa Association. And so I get to peek behind the veil a lot of like, okay, this is what's going on in this state. This is why we are against it or why we're fighting for it. And, they are so instrumental in lobbying and literally going here in Texas. They presented on the Senate floor of why the bill that was proposed was detrimental to our industry and our patients. And so I feel really privileged that I kind of have that inside scoop because it helps us be way ahead of the game where we're not having to pivot or be reactive in those ways.
That's awesome. So for someone, because it sounds like you're fairly involved, are you still training for some of the pharmaceutical companies as well?
Yeah, I do. And, I've got a training consulting company, so it's always usually tied through that. I don't really get to do any injectable training anymore, but laser medicine is my first and forever love. And so, at least 10 hours a week, I'm training on lasers outside of our organization. But yes, lots of time with all the vendors and the teaching and all the things.
So for someone who, so maybe they're new, maybe they're kind of a few years within this space. If their goal eventually is to get more involved with trainings and you talking about being on the association and being behind that curtain a little bit, what is your advice for those people that want to become more involved?
First and foremost, focus on being impactful in the treatment room. You have to be excellent in what you are wanting to teach on. Otherwise, it's just not fair. It's not fair to the people that are training with you. It's not fair for the patients that they're going to be treating. Focus on being excellent in the treatment room at whatever your craft is, first and foremost. But at the same time, be very vocal about your goals. And so I feel really lucky because I have people in my corner that, again, are honest with me. And so when I started telling my reps and telling people in other companies, these are my goals. This is what I'm working on. Like, tell me what's in the way of that they were honest enough with me to say, hey, this hasn't been looking very good for you, or the way that you deliver this messaging really needs some work. You're actually coming across like this, and I know that's not what you meant. Like, find people who are going to be honest with you and then be willing to grow in those things as well. And so I tell people, I don't just have like a blank open statement of like, everyone be honest with me on how you think. No, if I don't know you, please don't keep it to yourself. Just hit next. You don't need to tell me. But the people that I have asked, it's permission, like, please speak into me. And so there are people that literally will probably listen to this podcast and I'll receive a text to be like, hey, you said this and you thought you laughed like you were joking. That's not how it came off. Watch that. But the door has been open to them that they know. And I know they are for me. They are for my growth. And so it's a safe space to speak into my growth. And I'm so thankful for them because they're the ones that say my name when I'm not around and in rooms that I'm not in to help me get these opportunities. There are reps out there that maybe I haven't even seen them in like 3 years, but I opened that door for them 3 years ago and they're still doing that for me. But I think doing it with authenticity is so important too. Like, be yourself. Like, don't try to be what you think everyone else wants you to be to get there. Just be yourself and you will find the right people that match with that and want to see you succeed, because it is so exhausting if you climb your way to the top and then you're stuck there being someone that you're not. And so authenticity behind all of that is so, so, so important.
I think some advice that some people give is like caution around reps, like don't get too close or don't build a super close relationship with reps. So can you talk a little bit to kind of the type of relationship that you want to build? Obviously, it's an authentic relationship, but boundaries with either staff or reps or both.
Yeah. I think it's just remembering that like you're in the driving seat of how a relationship goes. And so I think the trouble that maybe you're referring to is like sometimes people do get really close to their reps and it ends up like biting them in the butt. But it's because they're going to like happy hour and dinner and vacations and gossiping about other injectors and sharing all of like the dirty laundry in the practice that you're in. Like that does not make a good reputation. I would not say that I'm like friends with any of my reps. Could I call them and us go grab dinner or something? Yes. But they would all also tell you that like there is a line and we're there to support each other. It's like mutual success, but also I don't need you to know all of the drama that's going on in my life or what just happened at work today. And I found when you move in that way, they also move in that way. And so it keeps you out of that like really sticky situation. And I've heard that too. Actually, one of the reps of one company had told another rep, like, you got in with Taylor. Like, I've been trying for years and she's just so like rigid. And she was like, no, she's not rigid. She just doesn't want to engage how you want to engage. There's just a line there.
I think that that's great advice there. Advice for kind of that same question, but for staff and when you're building a company, because I think too, sometimes you hear about practices that are built kind of more like a family, or you maybe have these interactions or relationships that are maybe not as professional. So like, how are you maintaining that professional relationship, but obviously building and caring about each employee?
Yeah, it's hard. And obviously their personalities in comparison to yours really changes that too. But I think that I do a pretty good job with that. Like my team knows if they're having a hard day, like I'm there for them, but also we have a job to do. I'll give you a great example. A few weeks ago, I had a team member call me on, I don't know, like a Tuesday. So we were at work. She had called in sick that day. And then she called me and she's like, I'm sorry. I don't know I don't trust anyone else to talk to this. She was going through all these personal things. So I left work and I went and sat on her couch and cried with her for 6 hours. And we did life together. But you better believe like she also was at work at 8 a.m. the next day. And like we haven't even talked about it since. And that was weeks ago because we have the good balance of like, look, human to human, I am here for you. And if you really need someone to sit there with you and cry, I will pick up the phone every single time. But also, we have a job to do. And so let's take the space to do both and hold them very separately also. Like we don't need to mix those things because then it gets really confusing. But also your team needs to know that like you care about their well-being and the human experience, right? Like jobs are only so much to what we're actually dealing with in real life. And I believe that the same thing. If I called one of my team members, I really believe that so many of them would drop whatever they were doing to come sit on my couch with me right now. But tomorrow we would be back at work and we would be treating patients like we are here to do.
That's awesome. So, any last advice that you have for those listening? Any words of wisdom? Really, any tips, tricks, anything that you want to leave everyone listening with?
I think I'll just go back to that authenticity thing. There's enough of everybody else in this industry. Like find who you are, find who you want to be, and just be that. And everything else will work out how it's supposed to. You're going to attract the right patients. You're going to attract the right team members or the right employers. But the sooner you can just get really confident in who you are as a person and what you want to bring to this table and in this industry, I think the faster people will find their path to success.
Great advice. So, Taylor, tell everyone where they can find you, where they can find your practice, if they have any lingering questions or want to come check your space out.
The best place to find me is on Instagram or LinkedIn at taylorsiemens.np. And then, yeah, we're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Houston.
If you did not know, I do batch record these episodes. When I record these seasons, I typically do it within a span of 2 months, to record them and then release them to you guys. I recorded these back in July, August. There have been some changes with regulations within the industry, as well as with this last guest, Taylor. She has actually gone into a new venture and is no longer with Vitalik. We did get authorization from her that it was still okay to release this episode, and she was happy to share part of her journey. But yes, I just wanted to let you guys all know that there are changes between obviously when we record and when I release these. So keeping that in mind as you continue to listen to the season, it is a great season. I'm really excited for you guys to listen to the rest of the episodes. All right, beauties, and that is a wrap on episode 1 of season 6. You know where to find the podcast. We are at aesthetic.chat with Kiki on Instagram. My personal Instagram is at aestheticnurse.kiki. Website to find more information about mentorship, trainings, podcast booking with me is aestheticnursekiki.com. Excited for you to continue to listen to this season.